Hey, what's going on, children of the sun? I decided that I want to just read more. It's been a goal of mine to finish all these books that I have. I bought a lot of books, but I haven't even started reading them. So instead of watching Netflix and television, I said, well, let me go ahead and read. Then I decided, hey, why don't I do it on YouTube so you guys can encourage me to keep reading? So if you want me to keep reading, like the video and comment. I'm going to be reading today, or for a while, Interview with the Vampire. Try to go through one chapter. If you guys want me to read another chapter and you're watching me live, then you can join in and encourage me. But until then, I'm just going to read one chapter at a time. So grab you a snack. It's bedtime, and I've got my wine. So all right, interview. I'm sorry. This is my favorite Mandela effect. I keep saying interview with a vampire, but it's actually interview with the vampire. Um, I'm from Universe A, y'all. So I remember as interview with a vampire, not the vampire. But whatever. I made a whole video about that, so you guys can go back and read that. Chapter 1. Hopefully I can read this because I'm 46. See, said the vampire thoughtfully. And slowly he walked across the room towards the window. For a long time he stood there with the dim light from Divisadero Street. Is that Spanish? And the passing beams of traffic. The boy could see the furnishings of the room more clearly now. The round oak table, the chairs, a wash basin hung on one wall with a mirror. He set his briefcase on the table and waited. But how much tape do you have with you? Asked the vampire, turning now as the boy could see his profile. Enough for the story of a life. Sure, it's a good life. Sometimes I interview as many as 3 or 4 people at night. Oh no, that's the point. if a, sure, if it's a good life. Sometimes I interview as many as 3 or 4 people a night, if I'm lucky. But it has to be a good story. That's only fair, isn't it? Admirably fair, the vampire answered. I would like to tell you a story of my life. Then I would like to do that very much. Great, said the boy, and quickly he removed a small tape recorder from his briefcase, making a making a check of the cassette and the batteries. I'm really anxious to hear why you believe this. Why you No, said the vampire abruptly. We can't begin that way. Is that your equipment ready? Yes, said the boy. Then sit down. I'm going to turn on the overhead light. But I thought vampires didn't like light, said the boy. If you think the dark adds to the atmosphere. But then he stopped. The vampire was watching him with his back to the window. The boy could make out nothing of his face. And something about the still figure there distracted him. He started to say something again, but he said nothing. Then he sighed with relief when the vampire moved towards the table and reached the overhead corner. Ooh, yes, drink. Yeah, I remember from the 90s as well. That was a good movie. You should watch the TV series. I think it's on Netflix now. That's why I'm reading it. Ooh, excuse me, I'm sorry, my voice. The vampire was utterly white and smooth, as if he were sculpted from bleached bone, and his face was was as seemingly inanimate as a statue, except for the 2 brilliant green eyes that looked down at the boy intently, like flames in a skull. But when the vampire smiled, almost wistfully, the smooth white substance of his face moved with the infinitely flexible but minimal lines of a cartoon. Do you see? He asked still softly. The boy shuddered, lifting his hand as if to shield himself from the powerful light. His eyes moved slowly over the finely tailored black coat. He'd only glimpsed in the bar. Was this a sorry? Can't say. He only glimpsed in I guess, the long folds of the cape, the black silk tie knotted at the throat, and the gleam of the white collar that was white as vampire's flesh. He stared at the vampire's full black hair and the waves that were combed back over the tips of his ears. Ooh, this is getting really detailed about it. Looks. The curls that barely touched the edge of his white collar. Now, do you still want to see the do you do you still want the interview? The vampire asked. He sounds kind of gothic looking, like he's got black hair, his skin is really white, he's got this black suit, this cape over the suit. He sounds like what you would think like a gothic person who just got really white skin, but it's like pretty. Now do you still want the interview? The vampire asked. The boy's mouth was open for a sound to come out, but it was nothing, and he nodded. Then he said, "Yes." The vampire sat down opposite of him and leaning forward said gently, confidently, "Don't be afraid. Just start the tape." Sorry, I'm so dramatic. Then he reached over the length of the table. The boy recoiled, sweat running down the sides of his face. The vampire clamped a hand on the boy's shoulder and said, "Believe me, I won't hurt you. I want this opportunity. It's more important to me than you can realize. I want you to begin." And as he withdrew his hand and sat collected, waiting, it took a moment for the boy to wipe his forehead and his lips with a handkerchief, to stammer that the microphone was in the machine, to press the button, to say what the machine was on. "You weren't always a vampire, were you?" he began. "No," answered the vampire. "I was 25 years old man when I became a vampire, and the year was 1791. The boy was startled by the precision of the date, and he repeated it before he asked, "How did it come about?" "There's a simple answer to that. I don't believe I want to give simple answers," said the vampire. "I think I want to tell the real story." "Yes," the boy said quickly. He was folding his handkerchief over and over and wiping his lips now with it again. "There was a tragedy," the vampire said. "It was my younger brother. He died. And then," he stopped and said that the boy cleared his throat and wiped his face again before stuffing the handkerchief almost impatiently into his pocket. "It's not painful, is it?" he asked timidly. Does it seem so?" asked the vampire. "No," he shook his head. "It's simply that I've told only wait, it's simply that I've only told the story to one other person, and that was long ago. No, it's not painful." "We're living in Louisiana then." Oh, he's continuing. "We were living in Louisiana then. We received a land grant and settled two indigo plantations on the Mississippi, yet very near New Orleans." "Ah, that's the accent." Oh, I guess he said like this. "Very near New Orleans." "Ah, that's the accent," the boy said softly. For for a moment, the vampire stared blankly. "I have no accent," he began to laugh. And the boy, flustered, answered quickly, "I noticed it in the bar when I asked you, 'What did you do for a living?' And it's just a slight sharpness in the consonants. That's all. I never guessed it was French." "It's all right," the vampire assured him. "It's not as sh- I'm not as shocked as I pretend to be. It's only that I forget from time to time." "Please," said the boy. "I was talking about the plantations. There had been a great deal to do with it, really, my becoming a vampire." but I'll come to that. Our life there was both luxurious and primitive, and we ourselves found it extremely attractive. You see, we lived far better than we could ever have lived in France. Perhaps the sheer wilderness of Louisiana only made it seem so, but seeming so it was. I remember I remember the imported furniture that cluttered the house, the vampire said. The vampire smiled, excuse me. And the harpsichord that was lovely. Oh, that's what it was. Piano things. My sister used to play it. On summer evenings, she would sit at the keys and with her back to the open French windows. And I can still remember that thin, rapid music and the vision of the swamp rising beyond her. The moss hung cypress floating. The moss hung, sorry, I can't see. Where's the light? Because I'm reading in the dark. The moss hung cypresses floating against the sky. And there was the sounds of the swamp, a chorus of creatures, the cry of the birds. I think we loved it. It made the rosewood furniture all the most precious, the music more delicate and desirable. Even with the wisteria tore the shutters of the attic windows and worked its tendrils right into the whitewashed brick in less than a year. Yes, we loved it, all except my brother. I don't think I ever heard him complain about anything, but I knew how he felt. My father was dead, then I was the head of the family, and I had to defend him constantly from my mother and sister. They wanted to take him visiting to New Orleans for parties, and he hated those things. I think he stopped going altogether before he was 12. Prayer was the mattered for him. Prayer was what mattered to him. Prayer was his leather-bound lives of the saints. Finally, I built him an oratory removed from the house, and he began to spend most of every day there, and often the early evening. It was ironic, really. He was so different from us, so different from everyone, and I was so regular. Then there was nothing extraordinary about me whatsoever, the vampire smiled. Sometimes in the evening, I would go out and find him in the garden near the oratory, sitting absolutely composed on the stone bench there. And I tell him my troubles, the difficulties I had had with the slaves, how I distrusted the overseer or the weather of my brokers, all problems that made up the length and breadth of my existence. And he would listen, making only a few comments, always sympathetic, so that when I left him, I had the distinct impression he'd solved everything for me. I didn't think I couldn't deny him anything, and I vowed that no matter how it would break my heart to lose him, he would enter the priesthood when the time came. Of course, I was wrong. The vampire stopped. It was a dramatic pause. For a moment, the boy only gazed at him, and he started as if awakened from deep thought. He floundered as if he could not find the right words. Uh, he didn't want to be a priest? The boy asked. The vampire studied him as if trying to discern the meaning of his expression. Then he said, I mean that I was wrong about myself, about my not denying him anything. His eyes moved over for the far wall and fixed the panes of the window. He began to see visions. Real visions? The boy asked. But again, there was no hesitation, as if he were thinking of something else. I didn't think so, the vampire answered. It happened when he was 15. He was a very handsome man. He had the smoothest skin and the largest blue eyes. He was robust, not thin as I am now, then, but his eyes, it was as if When I looked into his eyes, I was standing alone on the edge of the world, a windswept ocean breeze. There was nothing but the soft roar of the wind. Damn, Louis is a verbose. This dude, he talks like this for. Does he talk like this every day? Man, dude uses all types of words when he's talking. Whew. I can't imagine talking to somebody like this. Okay, back to the story. On a windswept ocean. Okay, I can't take Louis seriously, man. They haven't told us his name, but I know this is Louis. I've read some of the books. On a windswept ocean breeze, there was nothing but the soft roar of the wind waves. Well, he said, his eyes still fixed on the window panes. He, he began to see visions. He only hinted at this at first, but he stopped taking the meals altogether. He lived in the oratory. At any hour of the day or night, I could find him on the bare flagstones kneeling before the altar. And the oratory must be like a temple or a church or something. And the oratory itself was neglected. He stopped tending the candles or changing the altar clothes or even sweeping out the leaves. One night I became really alarmed when I stood at the rose arbor watching him for one solid hour, during which he never moved his knees and never once lowered his arms, which was outstretched in the form of a cross. The slaves all thought he was mad. The vampire ra- raised his eyebrows in wonder. I was convinced that he was only overzealous. That is his love for God. He had perhaps he had perhaps gone too far. Then he told me about the visions, both Saint Dominic and the Blessed Virgin Mary, and he had come to him in the oratory. They had told him he was going to sell our property in Louisiana, everything he owned, and use the money to do God's work in France. Your brother was crazy. You gonna sell our property and join the monastery? Yeah, homeboy done lost his marbles. My brother was to be a great religious leader, to return the country to its former fervor, and to turn the tide against atheism and the revolution. Of course, he had no money of his own. I was to sell the plantation and our townhouses in Orleans. I believe he said it like that, and gave his money to him. Again, the vampire stopped. Dramatic pause. And the boy sat motionless, regarding him, astonished. Excuse me, he whispered. What did you say? Did you sell the plantations? No, said the vampire, his face calm as if it had been from the start. I laughed at him, and he became incensed. Sensed. He insisted his command from the Virgin herself. Who was I to disregard it? Who indeed? He asked softly, as if he were thinking of this again. Who indeed? And the more he tried to convince me, the more I laughed. It was nonsense. I told him the product of an immature and even morbid mind. The oratory was a mistake, I said to him. I would have it torn down at once, but to go to school to New Orleans and get inane notions out of his head. I don't remember all that, but I remember the feeling. Behind all the contentious dismissed on my part was a smoldering anger and disappointment. I was I was bitterly disappointed. I didn't believe him at all. But that's understandable, said the boy quickly when the vampire paused. His expression was his expression of astonishment softened. I mean, Would anyone have believed him? I wouldn't. Is it so understandable? The vampire looked at the boy. I think perhaps it was vicious egotism. Let me explain. I loved my brother, as I told you, and at times I believed him to be a living saint. I encouraged him to his prayer and meditations, and I said that I was willing to give him up to the priesthood. And if someone had told me a saint of Aries or Lourdes who saw visions, I would have believed it. I was a Catholic. I believed in saints. I lit tapers before the statues in churches. I knew their pictures, their symbols, their names, but I couldn't believe my brother. Not only did I not believe he saw visions, I couldn't entertain the notion for a moment. Now why? Because he was my brother. Holy he might be, peculiar most definitely, but Francis of Assisi, no. And that's some shade. Not my brother. No brother of mine could be such. That is egotism. Do you see? The boy thought about it before he answered, and then he nodded and said that yes, he thought that he did. Perhaps he saw the visions. Oh, wait, wrong voice. Perhaps he saw the visions, said the vampire. Then you don't claim to know now whether he did or not? No. I do know that he never wavered in his conviction for a second. That I know now, and I knew that the night he left my room crazed and grieved, he saw waver. He never wavered for one instant. And within minutes, he was dead. How? The boy asked. He simply walked out the French doors onto the gallery and stood for a moment at the head of the brick stairs. Then he fell. He was dead when I reached the bottom, his neck broken. The vampire shook his head in consternation. Consternation. I've heard that word. But his face was still serene. Did you see him fall? Asked the boy. Did he lose his footing? No, but two of the servants saw it happen. They said that he had looked up as if he had just seen something in the air. Then his entire body moved forward as if being swept by the wind. One of them said he was about to say something when he fell. I thought that he was about to say something too, but it was at that moment I turned away from the window. My back was turned, and when I had heard the noise, I glanced at the when I heard the my back was turned when I heard the noise. He glanced at the tape recorder. I could not forgive myself. I felt responsible for his death, he said, and everyone else seemed to think I was responsible also. But how could they? You said they saw him fall. It wasn't a direct accusation. They simply knew that something had passed between us that was unpleasant, that we had argued minutes before the fall. The servants heard us. My mother heard us. My mother would not have stopped asking what had happened and why my brother, who was so quiet, had been shouting. Then my sister joined in, and of course I refused to say, but I was so bitterly shocked and miserable that I had no patience with it, only the vague determination that they would not know about his visions. They would not know that he had become finally not a saint, but only a fanatic. My sister went to bed rather than face the funeral, and my mother told everyone in the parish that something horrible had happened in my room, which I would not reveal. And even the police questioned on the word of my own mother. Finally, the priest came to me see me and demanded to know what had gone down. I told no one. It was only a discussion, I said, and I was not on the gallery when he fell. I protested, and they all stared at me as if I had killed him, and I felt I'd killed him. I sat in the parlor beside his coffin for 2 days thinking, I have killed him. I stared at his face only until spots appeared before my eyes, and I nearly fainted. Let's get dramatic. The hack of his skull had been shattered on the pavement, and his head had the wrong shape. I'm sorry. And his head had the wrong shape on the pillow. I forced myself to stare at his. I forced myself to stare at his study simply because I could not hardly endure the pain and the smell of the decay. I forget it's 1700s. As I was tempted over to try to open his eyes, all these things were mad thoughts, mad impulses. The main thought was this: I had laughed at him. I had not believed him. I had not been kind to him. He had fallen because of me. That's heavy, man. This really happened, didn't it? The boy whispered. You're telling me something that's true. Yes, said the vampire, looking at him without surprise. I wanted to I want to go on telling you, but his eyes passed over the boy and returned to the window. He sh- only he only sh- he showed only faint interest in the boy, who seemed engaged in some inner struggle. So he do got me tickled, man. Louis, them words, man. Oh man, no wonder him and Lestat had issues. Okay, where am I? But you said you didn't know about the visions. That you, a vampire, didn't know for certain whether I want to take things in order, said the vampire. I want to go on telling you things as they happen. No, I don't know about the visions to this day. And again, he waited until the boy said, yes, yes, please go on. Well, I wanted to sell the plantations. I wanted to see the house or the oratory again. I leased them finally to an agent, which would work them, which which would work them for me in menacing. So I never, and need never go there. And I moved my mother and sister to one of the townhouses in New Orleans. Of course, I did not escape my brother for a moment. I could think of nothing but his body rotting in the ground. He was buried in the St. Louis Cemetery in New Orleans, and I did everything to avoid passing those gates. But but still, I thought of him constantly, drunk or sober. I saw his body rotting in the coffin, and I couldn't hear it over and over. I dreamed that he was at the head of the steps, and I was holding the arm, taking kindly to him, urging him back into the bedroom, telling him gently that I did believe him, that he must pray for me to have faith. Meantime, the slaves at Point du Lac, that was my plantation, had begun to talk of seeing his ghost on the gallery, and the overseer couldn't keep order. Police in the city asked my sister offensive questions about the whole incident, and she became hysteric. She wasn't really a hysteric. She simply thought that she ought to react that way. So she did. I drank all the time and was at home as little as possible. I lived like a man who wanted to die, but had no courage to do it to himself. I walked black streets and alleys alone, and I passed out in the cabarets. I backed out of the two duels more from apathy than cowardice, and truly wished to be murdered. And then I was attacked. It might have been anyone. My invitation was open to sailors, thieves, maniacs, anyone. But it was a vampire. And he caught me a few steps from my door one night and left me for dead. Or so I thought. You mean he sucked your blood? The boy asked. It's corny. Yes, the vampire laughed. He sucked my blood. That is the way it's done. But you lived. You said he left you for dead. Well, he drained me almost to the point of death, which was for him sufficient. I was put to bed as soon as I was found, confused and really unaware of what had happened to me. I suppose I thought that the drink had finally caused a stroke. I expected to die now, and I had no interest of eating or drinking or talking to the doctor. My mother sent for the priest. I was feverish by then, and I told the priest everything, all about my brother's visions and what I had done. I remember I clung to his arm, making him swear over and over he would tell no one. I know I didn't kill him, I said to the priest finally. It's that I cannot live now. That that he's dead, not after how I treated him. That's ridiculous, he answered me. Of course you can live. There's nothing wrong with you, but self-indulgence. Your mother needs you, not to mention your sister. As a as this brother of yours, he was possessed of the devil. I was so stunned when he said I couldn't protest. The devil made the decisions. He went on to explain, the devil was rampant. The entire country of France was under the influence of the devil, and the revolution had been his greatest triumph. Nothing would have saved my brother but exorcism, prayer, fasting, men to hold him down while the devil raged in his body and tried to throw him about. The devil threw him down those steps. Oh, wait. The devil threw him down those steps. I don't know how I got that accent for this guy. It's perfectly obvious, he declared. You you the ones talking to your brother in that room. You were talking to the devil. Well, this enraged me. I believed before that I had been pushed to my limits, but I had not. He went on talking about the devil, about the voodoo amongst the slaves had caused the possession of the in the other parts of the world. And I went wild. I wrecked the room in the process of nearly killing him. But your strength, but your strength, the vampire, asked the boy. I was out of my mind, the vampire explained. I did things I could not have done in perfect health. The scene is the scene is confused, pale, fantastical now, but I do remember that I drove him out of the back doors of the house. Ugh, the back doors of the house, across the courtyard, and against the brick wall in the kitchens, where I pounded his head until I nearly killed him. But I was subdued finally and exhausted. And then almost to the point of death, they bled me. The fools. But I was going to say something else. It was then that I conceived my own egotism. Perhaps I'd seen it reflected in the priest. His contemptuous attitude toward my brother reflected my own. His immediate shadow carping about the devil. His refusal to even entertain the idea that the sanctity had passed so close. But he did believe, no, this is still a vampire. But he did believe in possession by the devil. That it is much more mundane idea, said the vampire immediately. People who cease to believe in God or goodness altogether still believe in the devil. I don't know why. No, I need to indeed know why. Evil is always possible, and goodness is eternally difficult. But you must understand, possession is really another way of saying someone is mad. I felt it was for the priest. I'm sure he'd seen madness. Perhaps he had a good, perhaps he had stood right over raving madness and pronounced it as possession. You don't have to see Satan when he is exorcised, but to stand in the presence of a saint, to believe that the saint has seen a vision. No, it's egotism. A refusal to believe it could occur in a midst. I never thought of it that way, said the boy. But what happened to you? You said they bled you to cure you, and that must have nearly killed you. The vampire laughed. Yes, it certainly did. But the vampire came back that night. You see, he wanted he wanted Ponte de Lac, my plantation. It was very late, and my sister had fallen asleep. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. He came in from the courtyards, opening the French doors with a sound, a tall, fair-skinned man with a mass of blonde hair and a graceful, almost feline quality to his movements. And gently, he draped a shawl around over my sister's eyes and lowered the wick of the lamp. She dozed there beside the basin and the cloth which she was bathed, which she had bathed my forehead, and she never once stirred under the shawl till the morning. But by that time, I was greatly changed. What was this change? Asked the boy. The vampire sighed. He leaned back against the chair and looked at the walls. At first, I thought he was another doctor or someone summoned by the family to try to reason with me. But his suspicion was removed at once. He stepped close to my bed, and leaned down so that his face was at the lamplight, and I saw that he was no ordinary man at all. His gray eyes burned with an incandescence, and the long white hands which hung from by his sides were not those of a human being. I thought I knew everything in that instant, and that he told me was on, and all that he told me was only the aftermath. What I mean is, the moment I saw him, I saw this extraordinary aura, and I knew him to be no creature I had ever known. I reduced to nothing the ego which could not accept the presence of an extraordinary human might be in the midst was crushed. All my conceptions, even my guilt, wish to die, seemed utterly important. I completely forgot myself, he said, now silent, touching his breast with his fist. I forgot myself totally. And in that instant, totally the meaning of possibility. And from then on, I experienced an increasing wonder as he talked to me and told me of what I might become, of what his life had been, and stood to be my past shrink to embers. I saw my life as if I stood apart from it. The vanity, the self serving, the constant fleeing from one petty annoyance after another, the lip service to God and the Virgin and a host of saints whose names filled my prayer books. None of them made the slightest difference in a narrow, materialistic, and selfish existence. It's deep. No wonder he's single. I saw my real gods, the gods of most men, food, drink, and security and conformity, cinders. The boy's face was tense with a mixture of confusion and amazement. And so you decided to become a vampire? He asked. The vampire was silent for a moment. Decided. It doesn't seem like the right word. Yet I cannot say that it was inevitable for the moment that he stepped into the room. No, indeed, it was not inevitable. Yet I can't say I decided. Let me say that when he'd finished speaking, not other decisions was possible for me, and I pursued my course without a backward glance, except for one. Except for one? What? My last sunrise, said the vampire. That morning I was not yet a vampire. I saw my last sunrise. I remember it completely, yet I do not think I remember any other sunrise before it. I remember the light came first to the tops of the French windows, a paint, a paling behind the lace curtains, then a gleam growing brighter and brighter in patches among the leaves of the tree. Finally, the sun came through the windows themselves, and a lace lay in shadows on the stone floor, and over the forms of my sister, who was still sleeping, shadows of lace on the shawl over her shoulders and head. As soon as she was warm, she pushed the shawl away without awakening, and then the sun shone full on her eyes, and she tightly tightened her eyelids. Then it was the gleaming on the table, where she was rested her head on her arms, and gleaming, blazing in the water in the pitcher. I could feel it on my hands, on my counterpane, and then on my face. I lay in bed thinking about all the things the vampire had told me. Then it was what I said goodbye to the sunrise, and it went out to become a vampire. It was the last sunrise. Boy, this dude is dramatic. Oh, God. Imagine eternity with this guy. He's entertaining. The vampire looked out the window again. He's so dramatic. Woo. The vampire looked out the window again, and when he stopped, the silence was so sudden the boy seemed to hear it. Then he could hear the noises with the street. The sound of the truck was deafening, the light cord stirring with the vibration. Then the truck was gone. Do you miss it? He asked, and then in a small voice. Not really, said the vampire. There were so many other things, but where are we? You want to know how it happened, how I became a vampire. Yeah. I'm sorry, I added that. Yes, said the boy. The boy is all of us. How did you change exactly? I can't tell you exactly, said the vampire. I can tell you about I can tell you about it. Enclosed enclose it with words that will make the value of it to me evident to you. But I can't tell you exactly any more than I can tell you exactly what is the experience of sex if you've never had it. The young man seemed struck. That's pretty bold. How can I explain how great sex is to you if you've never had it? You really can't. You can kind of describe it, but once you really have it, it's not even what people describe. Wow, that's pretty deep, Louis. The young man seemed struck suddenly with still other questions. And before he could speak, the vampire went on. As I've told you, this vampire, Lestat, wanted the plantation. A mundane reason, surely, for granting me a life which will last until the end of the world. But he was not a very discriminating person. He didn't consider the world's small population of vampires as a being of a select club, I should say. He had human problems. A blind father who did not know his son was a vampire and was not to find out. Living in Nolans, I become too difficult for him, considering his needs and the necessity to care for his father, and he wanted Point du Lac. He went at once to the plantation that the next evening, ensconced the blind father in the master bedroom. Ensconced, what's that? And I proceeded to make the change. I should look that up. I shouldn't skip words. Ensconced. I can just ask Google. Okay, Google. What does ensconced mean? No, no. Ooh, that's gross. That was a wrong word. I'll just look for it. Yeah. Sorry, we're taking a little read break. Ensconced. How do you spell it? E-N. Yo. Look at Montre learning new words. No, I think I'm doing Spanish. Ensco. Oh, ensconce. Ensconce. Establish or settle someone in a comfortable, safe, or secret place. Oh, okay, okay. All right. I'm on the same page now. And we learned a new word, y'all. Ensconced. And got some big words in this bitch. So stupid. We learning something new, y'all. All right. Ugh. We went once to the plantation the next evening and ensconced the blind father in the master bedroom, and I proceeded to make the change. I cannot say that it consisted in any one step really, though one, of course, was the step beyond which I could make no return. But there were several acts involved, and the first was the death of the overseer. The stag took him in his sleep. I was to watch and to approve, that is, to witness the taking of human life as proof of my commitment and a part of my change. This proved without doubt that the most difficult part. I told you I had no fear regarding my own death, only a squeamish about taking my life myself. But I had a most high regard for the life of others, an honor to the Most High regarding for the life of others, and a horror of death most recently developed because of my brother. I had to watch the overseer awake with a start, try to throw off the stat with both hands, fail, then lie there, struggling under the stat's grasp, and finally go limp, drained of blood, and die. He did not die at once. He stood in his narrow bedroom for the better part of an hour, watching him die. Part of the change, as I said, is that would never have stayed otherwise. But then it was necessary to get rid of the overseer's body. I was almost sick from this, weak and feverish already. I had little reserve in handling the dead body with such a purpose caused me nausea. The stat was laughing, telling me callously that I would feel no different once I was a vampire, and I would laugh too. He was wrong about that. I never laughed at death, no matter how often, regularly, I was the cause of it. Dude was deep. But let me take things in order. We had to drive up the river road until we came to the open fields and leave the overseer there. We tore his coat, stole his money, and saw to it that his lips were stained with liquor. I knew his wife, who lived in all this, I, and knew the state of desperation she would suffer when the body was discovered. But more than sorrow for her, I felt the pain that she would never know would happen. That her husband had not been found drunk on the road by robbers. As we beat the body, bruised the face and the shoulders, I became more and more aroused. Of course, you must realize that all this time the vampire Lestat was extraordinary. He was no more human to me than a biblical angel. But under this pressure, my enchantment with him was strained. I had seen my becoming a vampire in two lights. The first light was simply enchantment. Lestat had overwhelmed me with on my deathbed. But the other light was my wish for self-destruction, my desire to be thoroughly damned. This was the open door through which Lestat had come to on both first and second occasions. Now I was not destroying myself but someone else, the overseer, his wife, his family. I recoiled and might have fled from Lestat, but my sanity thoroughly shattered. Had not been since with an infallible instinct that was happen that was happening. Whew, my eyes. I gotta do that accent all the time. It gets me into the story. But this wine is getting to me too. The vampire muse. Let me say the most Let me say the powerful instinct of a vampire to whom even the slightest change in human facial expression is apparent as a gesture. Lestat was a preternatural, preternatural, preternatural. Lestat was a preternatural timing. He rushed me with the carriage and whipped the horse home. I want to die, I began to murmur. This is unbearable. I want to die. You have you have it in your power to kill me. Let me die. Sorry, he's dramatic. I refused to look at him, to be spellbound by the sheer beauty of his appearance. He spoke my name to me softly, laughing. As I said, he was determined to have the plantation. But would he have let you go under any circumstances? I don't know. Knowing Lestat as I do now, I would say that he would have killed me rather than let me go. But this was what I wanted to see. It didn't matter. No, this was what I thought I wanted. As soon as we reached the house, I jumped down out of the carriage and walked, a zombie, to the brick stairs where my brother had fallen. Oh, I could hear the dramatic music. The house had been unoccupied for months now. The overseer, having his own cottage in the Louisiana heat and damp, were already picking apart the steps. Every crevice was sprouting grass and even wildflowers. I remember feeling the moisture, which in the night was cool as I sat down on the lower steps and even rested my head against the brick and felt the little wax stem wildflowers with my hands. I pulled a clump of them out of the easy dirt on one hand, and I wanted to die. Kill me, kill me, I said to the vampire. Sorry, you're so dramatic. Woo, come on. Now I am guilty of murder. I can't live. He sneered with the impatience of people listening to the obvious lies of others. And then in a flash, He fastened on me, just as he had on my man. I thrashed against him wildly. I dug my boot into his chest and kicked as fiercely as I could, with his teeth stinging in my throat and fever pounding in my temples. And with the movement of his entire body, much too fast for me to see, he was suddenly standing disdainfully at the foot of the steps. I thought you wanted to die, Louis, he said. The boy made a soft, abrupt sound when the vampire said his name, which the vampire acknowledged with the quick answer. Yes, that is my name, he went on. Well, I lay there. Who is saying this? Well, I lay there helpless in the face of my own cowardice. Fastishness. Fatishness. That's another new word. Fat, fatishness. Fatishness? What the fuck is fatishness? Is that like facetious? What does fatishness mean? Oh, wait, I got a lot. What does fatishness mean? Ugh, come on. What does fatishness mean? Not fattish. Is this in the dictionary? Fetish, fatuousness. No, fatuousness. I think that's how you say it. Probably said it wrong. What does fatuousness mean? Oh, I said fortuitous. That's the wrong word. No, it's fat. Type it. But there's word. I can't say it right. Fatuous, fatuousness. Fatness means the quality of being stupid, not correct, or carefully thought about. Oh, fatuousness. The quality of being stupid and not carefully thought. Oh, damn, Louis, you made this. You just said I felt stupid. I feel very fortuitousness. I have fortuitousness because I didn't know the word, the quality of being stupid. I'm being very fortuitous because I don't even know how to say this word. All right, back to the story. Learning new words, y'all. Learning new words. My ass is getting sleepy. I think I'm gonna start at the end. I'm gonna stop at the end of this page. I'm gonna get sleepy. What time is it? Damn, I've been reading a long time. That's pretty good. Okay. Well, I lay there helpless in the face of my own cowardice and fortuitousness again, he said. Perhaps so directly confronted with it, I might in time have gained the courage to truly take my life, not in the whine or beg for others to take it. I saw myself turning on a knife, then languishing in the day-to-day suffering. There we go again. Yeah, Lord. Which I found necessary to penance from the confessional, truly hoping death would find me unaware and rendering me to fit eternal pardon, unless I saw myself as if in a vision standing at the head of the stairs, just where my brother had stood, and then hurtling my body down the bricks. He's so sad. Oh, Lord. goodness. Oh Lord, help me. Help me get to this. Okay, wait. I'm just gonna stop right there. I can't do it anymore. Okay. Last line was hurling myself. The bricks. Oh. Okay. Oh my God. But I love the movie and I love the TV show. I think she's just building his character because the way this dude goes on paragraphs, just talking. Now I've read The Vampire Lestat and some others. They can be verbose too, but the personality is completely different. It's completely different. Wait till I read like The Vampire Lestat. His personalities. They all talk these very big paragraphs, but ooh, Lord, I this is my first time reading Interview with the Vampire. And Louis, he already got me cracking up. He is verbose, man. He is verbose. Oh my goodness. All right, y'all. I'm like I said, I'm practicing reading because I got a lot of books that I have not read and they're just sitting on my shelf. So who knows? Like I said, I'm gonna do story time. I think this is gonna be a nice little something. We'll see. But it's really just so I can uh, get back into books and increase my vocabulary as I have been looking at these words. These words, man, they got some big words in there. I'm like, what does that mean? So hey, we'll all learn together. I just sorry I had to. I will talk to y'all later. Should I do this every night before I go to bed? Well, I might not be available because sometimes I'll be. Yeah, I don't know, but I'll see. Let's see what happens because I do need to practice. Like I said, I'm some of my goals is like Spanish, learn Spanish, and read more books. So we'll see what happens. Y'all have a great night. Have a good one. And good night. Let's read some books.